And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Sports Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Kenneth Grunfelder, and it's great to have you guys here on this Wednesday, March 26th. We have a lot to cover on the show today. Before I get into all that, just want to remind you guys, as always, to tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to hit that super chat button in the chat if you want to see me acknowledge any thought or comment you may have throughout the live broadcast. It makes the show more lively, more entertaining. Between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers, we appreciate you guys' viewership each and every day. So any contribution you can make to the show means the world to us as we put out content for you guys each and every day. And also, the other way to help out the show is by going to the link at the bottom of the show segment on the ticker, GSMCPodcast.net. That is GSMCPodcast.net. So let's get into what we are going to discuss for today. A lot to cover today. So we're going to start off the show. We will talk about Russell Wilson signing with the New York Giants. They are bringing him in. The Giants add another quarterback. That is the second quarterback that they have added to the roster in their many days. So we'll get into that and the impact of this move. Then we will also get into some basketball. We are going to talk about the Bucks star player Damian Lillard, as he is now ruled out indefinitely with a blood clot. And we will talk about the impact that has on this Bucks team. We will also get into talking about another move that was made in the NFL, and that is Stefon Diggs signing with the New England Patriots. So the Patriots add a playmaker to their offense, another playmaker, another former Buffalo Bill, I might add, as my dog starts barking for some reason. In the fourth part of the show, so I broke it up into two segments. One we'll cover today, the other tomorrow, and that is doing predictions for Major League Baseball. So today we're going to cover the American League. I'll tell you who I think is going to win each division, and then tomorrow we'll do the National League, and we'll take a look at the games for tomorrow. Those will be two different segments. Those will be towards the end of the show tomorrow. And then in the final part of the show, we will take a look at the Pittsburgh Steelers. We will do a season overview on their year and what they have done in the offseason. So let's get into the first topic, which is talking about Russell Wilson heading to the Giants. So we talked about Jameis Winston going to the Giants earlier this week. And, you know, from the content creators I was watching and, you know, really thinking about it, it's possible that, yes, based off of the contract that Jameis Winston got, that, you know, maybe the Giants might add another veteran quarterback. But it all depends on if Russ maybe ended up going, you know, to Cleveland, let's say, because he visited with Cleveland. If that were the case, then the Giants definitely would maybe go after a rookie quarterback. But now they bring in Russell Wilson, and he's going to be the starter. He's going to be the starter. Now, there could be a time where if Russ isn't playing well, then they're going to put in Jameis Winston. And if that's the case, then the Giants' season is not going very well. But Russell Wilson, now coming in, he will be the starting quarterback. Now, I know what I just brought up before about the Giants taking a rookie quarterback. Does that completely take them out of taking a Cam Ward, possibly if he doesn't go number one, or Shedeur Sanders? Not necessarily, but I do think this lessens the chances significantly. I think if the Giants stay at 3, which I think they have every intention of doing that, even if the quarterbacks are taken 1 and 2, Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders, then I think the Giants are going to take a Travis Hunter or an Abdul Carter. Now, could there be a scenario where Shedeur Sanders falls to them still at 3? And maybe they take him? Sure. But I do think, you know, for the Giants, they should take best player available at this point. I think you wait and you take a quarterback in the later rounds, which is kind of my approach when there was the idea of Aaron Rodgers possibly coming to the Giants. Now, that's definitely not happening now. But you got some generational talents towards the top of everybody's draft boards. Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter. I think that is the move at 3. Now, who I would prefer, right now for me, I would prefer Travis Hunter just because he could also play offense. You could add him to that secondary, which on paper, the defense for the Giants on paper looks pretty good. But the Giants have lacked explosiveness on offense Now, you had Saquon Barkley, but he's obviously not a factor anymore. But, when Barkley was hurt, there was really nobody else. Now last year you saw Malik Neighbors in his rookie season. Now you pair Travis Hunter up with him, and suddenly look at that receiving core. You had Darius Slayton back. You got Wan'Dale Robinson. Tyrone Tracy showed promises rookie season. Theo Johnson, the tight end. There's some weapons on this team, and if you add Travis Hunter to that, that looks pretty good. And you got Russell Wilson in there to throw the moon balls to Neighbors and to Darius Slayton, because Darius Slayton's a deep ball guy. So that works out well there. Now, for the specifics of the contract, back to Russ, it's a 1-year deal. It's up to $21 million, guaranteed money of $10.5 million. So, look, the Giants have done a great job with these quarterback deals. Jameis is only a 2-year deal. You could basically cut him after 1 year. And Russell Wilson is only on a 1-year deal. So, again, it doesn't pan out, and, if Joe Schoen and Brian Dable end up getting let go after 2025, then the new regime's going to come in, and both of those guys are going to be gone. So, you got those two guys, and you got Tommy DeVito still, because Tommy DeVito was the only quarterback on the roster. But Russ came back. Russ ended up coming in over Justin Fields. That was back in week 7. Didn't start the year, was dealing with a calf injury. So the Steelers, they made the switch. They took Fields out after the Steelers started off 4-2. They put in Russ, and he got off to a good start. The Steelers were winning games, 10-3 at one point, and it looked like they were going to be the team that was going to win the AFC North. And that ended up not happening. They finished 6-5 with Russ. Well, Russ is a starter last year, 6-5. They finished 10-7. They ended up getting knocked out in the wild card round to the Ravens. And Russ, completion rate 63.7%. He averaged about 225 yards per game passing, 16 touchdowns to 5 picks, which isn't bad. Still not the same player that he was in Seattle. They're going to be getting this kind of a player, the Giants. Now, if they would have got Russell Wilson, 6 years ago, Giant fans would be even more hyped about this. But I think this is a good fit for us. You got Brian Dable, and I think Brian Dable is going to coach him up. I think we're going to get, I think we're going to get a decent year out of Russ. Decent. Now, is that going to lead to a lot of wins for the Giants? Not really. And the Giants were sitting at 3.5 wins going into next year. They signed Russ. That hasn't changed. It's still 3.5. Because their schedule is impossible next year. So I wanted to go through their schedule. So this is what they have for the 2025 season. Let's go through it again. So their home games, the Cowboys, the Eagles, and the Commanders. That's a given. Then you have the Packers, the Vikings, the Chiefs, the Chargers, and the 49ers. Where are the wins coming from? Now, I don't think they're going to... Look, they avoided going winless at home last year. There's at least 1 or 2 wins in there, somehow. Then we look at the away games. Now, there's definitely some wins in the away games. You have the Cowboys, the Eagles, and the Commanders. Then you got the Bears, the Broncos, the Lions, the Raiders, the Saints, and the Patriots. There's definitely wins in there. But this Giants team, it's a tough schedule. It's a very tough schedule. And it's annoying because with the 49ers, the reason why they're playing the 49ers next year is because the 49ers finished in last place. And you would imagine that they're going to be healthy next year, and it's going to be a problem. Could the Giants surprise us? Like I said, sure. Sure they could. But it is a very tough schedule. And that's why, even though I like the moves that they've made, I don't think it's really going to translate to wins on the field next year. But I could be wrong. I could be wrong. And you go back to that Colts game, Drew Lock had a great day, and then at the end of the game, Brian Dable said, that's what happens when you get good quarterback play. So, you brought in 2 veteran guys that can come in and potentially win you games. So, maybe if the Giants get better quarterback play, I like the defense on paper. Maybe they do surprise us and they win more than 3 games. I think they will. But I don't think it's going to be by that much. But I hope I'm wrong. So, right now, I do think they will take best player available at 3. And then I think you might see them take a quarterback later in the draft. They're in a good spot right now. Now, there might be some disagreements because, this team is not a team that's going to be competing for a playoff spot. But you have a regime that needs to win games next year. So they're doing the best they can. But yeah, I think the offseason has been good for the Giants. Now they got to go out and have a good draft. Continue to fill out the roster. And then let's see what happens. But what do you guys think about the Russell Wilson move to the Giants? Let me know in the comments. No problem with it. The Giants needed stability at the quarterback position. And they're going to have that next season. But like I said, is it going to translate to wins? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. So we are going to take our first break of the show now. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit of basketball. We'll talk about Damian Lillard of the Bucks being ruled out indefinitely with a blood clot. So we'll get into that, and we'll talk about the impact of that will have on the Bucks as we get closer to the playoffs. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast, and for the second part of the show, we are now going to talk about Damian Lillard of the Bucks being ruled out indefinitely with a blood clot. And basically has the same thing that Victor Wembanyama has, but only, it's in his leg and not in his shoulder. But Dame has been out recently, but it was, being called a calf strain. And then it was reported that it is indeed a blood clot. And, diagnosed with DVT, deep vein thrombosis, which is what Victor Wembanyama has that in his right calf. So he's going to be ruled out indefinitely and immediately is being put on blood-thinning medication. He last played on March 18th. And like I said, it was deemed that it was a calf strain, but it's now more than that. Now, it doesn't seem like he has been ruled out completely for the season because, with Wemby, they said right away, yeah, he's out for the year. They just have Dame ruled out indefinitely. So there is, I guess, a small chance that, if the Bucks make a deep playoff run, that he could come back. So we'll have to wait and see if that does end up happening. Now, the team with Dame this year, they're 32-26, and then they're 8-5 when he doesn't. And there's going to be guys that have to step up in his absence. Obviously, you still have Giannis. So even with Dame being out, you still got one of the best players in the league. But some of the other role players are going to have to step up. Kyle Kuzma, who they traded for. They traded Chris Middleton away. They got Kuzma, Kevin Porter Jr. as well. Brook Lopez, who of course has been there for a while. So, yeah, they are going to have to. They're going to have to step up while Dame is out. And I mean, my guess is, he probably isn't going to come back at all, but I could be wrong. But even with Dame, I probably still wouldn't have had the Bucks going all the way. Because, who's at the top of the Eastern Conference right now? But this is what Damian Lillard said in a statement. He said, "It's unfortunate that something outside of my control would come up. Along with the Bucks medical staff, our priorities are to protect my health and safety. As much as I love basketball, I need to be there for my kids and my family. I'm grateful the Bucks acted quickly on this. They've been supportive and proactive throughout this process. I look forward to moving past this and continuing my career." So that's a statement from Damian Lillard. And had a disappointing first year with the Bucks in many people's eyes, but this year, I mean, he was doing pretty good. He was averaging just about 25 points per game, 4.7 rebounds per game, 7.1 assists. But yeah, that is a big loss. And we take a look now at where the Bucks currently are in the Eastern Conference standings. They're currently at the 5. They're 40-31 on the season. They're actually tied with the Pistons right now. So there's a scenario where, the Pistons could pass them and the Bucks are suddenly the 6th seed. And I don't see anybody from, the play-in finishing in the top 6. What you have right now in the play-in, at the Hawks, the Magic, the Bulls, and the Heat, that's what's going to end up happening. And speaking of the Heat, Jimmy Butler in his return last night, it didn't go so well. The Heat ended up winning 112-86. Now, they didn't have Steph Curry last night, the Warriors, but Butler went 5 of 12, over 2 from 3, only had 11 points. And actually, all 5 starters for the Heat scored in the double digits. So, yeah, the Warriors kind of, after that hot start with Butler, they've kind of lost now a couple of games. Actually, yeah, they've lost 2 in a row. So, but they got to get Curry back. But back to the Bucks, though. I mean, this hurts their chances of, making a deep playoff run, in my opinion. And like I said, not to say that I think they were going to, because I just think when you look at the Eastern Conference, it's top heavy. The 2 best teams are the top 2 seeds, the Cavs and the Celtics. And the Cavs have a 38-8 conference record this year. They've won 58 games. It's going to come down to the Celtics and the Cavs. Could we see, like right now, the Bucks are the 5th seed. They're matching up against the Pacers. Last year, they played against the Pacers in the first round, and they lost. Pacers are a good team. That's not going to be an easy first-round series. Now, if they slide down to the 6, well, now they go up against the Knicks. And the Knicks are going to be healthy because you're going to get Jalen Brunson back. Sorry, I just knocked over stuff I have on my desk here. But, yeah, I'm knocking it over in frustration because of Brunson being hurt. But Brunson actually is supposed to be back soon. I mean, the injury that he suffered, that was something that, was not going to keep him out the rest of the year, which, best news for the Knicks. So, yeah, I mean, could the Bucks advance and make it to the second round? yeah, I think that's right now, in my opinion, that's their ceiling. Is they are a second round exit. But you never know. You never know. This is an experienced team. And, like I said, you got Giannis, so anything is possible. But, yeah, I just think that's their ceiling at this point is the second round. But, yeah, this is a big loss. And, it's scary. Because now this is the second time this has happened to a player in this many months. And, we talked about, the Wembanyama blood clot situation. But, it's happened to players. And, for some, they end up having to retire because of it. Now, there's no indication of that with Damian Lillard. I mean, when I read his statement, he's coming back at some point. Whether it's this year, which I think we could rule that out. Well, at least I'm going to rule it out. But there's next year. He's coming back next year. You worry more about Wemby because he's a different kind of build. So, but it's scary, like I said. And we talked about Chris Bosh, when I talked about Wembanyama's and, how he had to retire, so it's tough. But thankfully, like Lillard said in the statement, Bucks acted quickly. And, hopefully he comes back from it, which he is going to. So, yeah, that's the news on Damian Lillard. Looking at some of the NBA action for tonight. Actually, we'll take a look at last night's. But tonight, the Bucks will be taking on the Nuggets in Denver. They're 6-point underdogs, so that's going to be a tough game for them. You got the Lakers and the Pacers tonight. That's a good game. The Knicks and the Clippers, that's at the Garden. And then you also have the Celtics taking on the Suns as well later tonight. And then also you got the Wizards and the 76ers and the Raptors and the Nets. But some pretty good games on tonight in the NBA. And then last night, we did talk about the Heat defeating the Warriors 112-86. No Steph Curry once again. The Pistons defeated the Spurs. Magic over the Hornets. The Knicks winning 128-113 over the Mavericks. I think Anthony Davis played. No, he did not play. Never mind. I lied. But yeah, Knicks win that one. Grizzlies win 140-103 over the Jazz. Cavs 122-111 over the Trailblazers. And then the Thunder get their 60th win last night. They win 121-105. So those are the scores from last night. I went over the games for today. But we're almost in April. Playoffs are right around the corner in the NBA. But let me know what you guys think, though, about Damian Lillard's injury. Do you think it's possible he comes back? Or do you think the next time we see him, it's going to be next year? And how far do you think the Bucks can go in the playoffs despite him being out? Like I said, I think they're going to go to the second round. That's their ceiling. That's their ceiling. Now, if they're playing against the Knicks, well, I kind of want them to get knocked out before that. But I do think they could advance at least one round. That's my thoughts. So, before we go to break, I just want to remind you guys once again to tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to hit that super chat button in the chat if you want to see me acknowledge any thought or comment you may have throughout the live broadcast. Makes the show more lively, more entertaining between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. We appreciate you guys' viewership each and every day, so any contribution you can make to the show means the world to us as we put out content for you guys each and every day. And also, the other way to help out the show is by going to the link at the bottom of the show segment on the ticker, GSMCPodcast.net. That is GSMCPodcast.net. And tomorrow, we'll begin the Sweet 16 in college basketball. So we will go over those games tomorrow as well. A big college basketball weekend coming up. 4 very good games tomorrow. That starts later in the day, depending on where you are. That starts at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. So we'll go over those games tomorrow. We'll recap the NBA action from tonight. But also, it's a big baseball day tomorrow, as well as opening day is tomorrow. And we will go over that. And we will go over the pitching matchups. Yeah, we'll go over the pitching matchups as well as my National League predictions as well. So when we come back from our next break, we will go back to the NFL. We will talk about now Stefon Diggs signing with the New England Patriots. We will talk about the impact of that move, if that's a good fit. How do I feel about the deal? We will get into all of that when we come back from our next break. So, with that being said, make sure to stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast, and for the third part of the show, we are now going to talk about Stefon Diggs signing with the New England Patriots. Now, with this deal, the Patriots have spent the most money in free agency. They have spent a total of $355 million. They signed Milton Williams from the Eagles to a 4-year, $104 million contract. They signed Carlton Davis to a 3-year, $60 million contract. They signed Harold Landry to a 3-year, $43.5 million contract. They've also signed other players as well. I mean, they signed Matt Collins as well. And now they signed Stefon Diggs to a 3-year, $69 million deal. $26 million guaranteed. Now, last year, his season got cut short. He tore his ACL in Week 8. And his stats through 8 games with the Texans last season, he had 496 receiving yards and 3 touchdowns. And, you know, he was off to a good start. But unfortunately, that had to happen to him. Now the Patriots bring him in. So right now, he's looked at as, I guess he's the number 1 receiver. Now, I think the deal is a bit of a gamble. I'm not big on this deal just because I feel like Diggs is, on the decline. And on top of that, it's because of the injury. I think if he doesn't get hurt last year, I'm okay with it. But now he's coming off of a significant injury. Obviously production has dipped in recent years. So I that's why the deal I'm not too high on, I guess. But the Patriots overpaid because they need more offensive talent to surround their young quarterback. And I think this helps the offense out. Like, there's obviously benefits to bringing in Stefon Diggs. It's just you're taking a gamble on it. Because he's not the same player he was in Buffalo. And now he's, coming off of a significant injury. So, I don't know what to expect. I think the Patriots are going to continue to add offensive talent, especially in this upcoming draft. They're going to have to do that. They also added to the offensive line. Because I think the defense is going to be good. The defense is going to be solid. And the Patriots' defenses are usually good year to year. It's just the offense that has really been devoid of elite talent. But now you have the young quarterback, and now you can continue to build around him. Like I said, you added Matt Collins, who led the Bills in touchdown receptions last season. Now you add Stefon Diggs. You still got Hunter Henry. You still got Ramondre Stevenson. But there's still more that you could add to this offense. You can continue to improve the offensive line. Maybe if Travis Hunter falls past the top 3, they can get him. Or the Patriots could draft Tetairoa McMillan, because that's another top wide receiver prospect that could be available. Unless maybe the Patriots trade out and they trade down and get more picks. That's also a possibility. I could definitely see the Patriots doing that. But I think with their first pick, they should stay where they are and draft an elite level talent on offense. Because now if you add in McMillan with Diggs, it's not bad. It's not bad. And you still got some of the other young receivers that they drafted last year that maybe they take another step forward. So yeah, it's really the contract for me that I don't like. I do think that he could be productive with the Patriots as the number 1 receiver, but I do worry about the injuries. He's going to be 32 in November, but maybe he bounces back. And he shows us that he really still has a ton of gas left in the tank, as opposed to some. But looking at Diggs, we did go over his stats from last year. His last season in Buffalo, he did have 1,100 yards receiving. He had 8 touchdowns. And he was kind of the third option with the Texans. Well, he was really going to be the third option, because they had Tank Dell, or the second option at least. You got Tank Dell, and he was coming back from injury. You had Nico Collins. Texans dealt with a lot of injuries to their receiving core last year. We really didn't get to see, Tank and Diggs and Nico all be on the field at the same time, because at least one of them was out at some point during the year. So, but now Diggs can reestablish himself as a number 1 receiver, and he's got a young quarterback that's going to be throwing him the ball. Now I know there's going to be some concerns with Diggs' attitude, and if he doesn't get the ball enough, how is that going to affect the relationship with him and Drake May? Drake May's going into his second year. He's going to be the starter from day 1. How is that going to pan out? It'll work. I think it's going to work. But again, I'm not expecting Stefon Diggs to go out there and have a season like Jamar Chase had. I think there's going to be some games where Stefon Diggs doesn't produce, but it's going to happen. It happens to every receiver. You're not going to have a big game every single time. But you know what? I do like what the Patriots have done in the offseason. They've spent a ton of money. Vrabel now is the head coach, and bringing back Josh McDaniels. This Patriots team is going to win more games. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say, again, that they're going to be a playoff team, but they won 4 games last year, right? I definitely think they can win more than that. And I've said it before. And if they can knock this draft out of the park, because we don't know what the Jets are going to be. And, Tua hasn't been able to stay healthy other than 2023. But, that's been sandwiched in between 2 years where Tua's gotten hurt. The concussions have been a problem. And, last year against the Bills, I know that the last game of the regular season doesn't really count because it was the backups. But, the Patriots, they were up 14-0 in Buffalo, a couple weeks before that. And that was with the team that they had last year. Now you have a better team. They could definitely, stir the pot in the AFC East. They're not going to be a pushover. They're not. It's not going to be an easy game for you to win against the Patriots, because they are coming in as a better team. How many wins are they going to get? I mean, look, we're very early in the process of 2025. We still got the entire NFL draft. But I think you will definitely see them address the offense heavily, as they should. That's a team that definitely needs to go more offense. Now, could they add elite level talent on defense if it's available? Sure. But I do think, like I said, the best course of action for them is maybe they take an offensive lineman, but I think you go after a playmaker. That's just my opinion. But let me know what you guys think about that. But yeah, no, I like the pairing of Diggs with Drake May. It's just I'm not a huge fan of that contract because that contract definitely could age poorly. It definitely could. Now they could eat that money if he's really disappointing and they cut him. But I think if it was a 2-year deal, I'd feel a little bit better. 3 years, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. But I'd have to look more into the contract and how it's set up. Because again, it's a player coming off of it. But the main thing for me is it's just he's coming off of the ACL. That's what it comes down to. So, yeah, so the Patriots, they do add a playmaker. There's still some other receivers out there. You still got Keenan Allen, who's unsigned, right? I'm curious to see where he'll end up because he kept saying it's either going to be the Bears or it's going to be out in L.A. Where's he going to end up? We'll have to wait and see. But, yeah, it took a while for Diggs to sign. I mean, we're almost in April already. But that's another big name that is off the board. And actually, so Keenan Allen is still available. Let's see who else, what other receivers are left. So I want to look at the free agents if I can. Because I'll go to Over the Cap. Over the Cap has everything. So currently, want to look at the free agent wide receivers. So Diggs is with the Patriots. Oh, yeah, that's right. So you have Keenan Allen, who's still a free agent. You still have Amari Cooper, who's a free agent. Tyler Lockett's a free agent. Deontay Johnson is a free agent. Then you got Robert Woods. But, he's not the same player he was back with the Rams. Josh Reynolds, Nelson Aguilar, DJ Chark, Tyler Boyd, Elijah Moore. Maybe the Bengals bring back Tyler Boyd on a cheap deal. Yeah, there's not a lot of big names left. Really just focus on at the top. And that's Diggs, who just got signed. Well, Keenan Allen, Amari Cooper, and I guess Tyler Lockett. Those are the big names that are still out there. I think Tyler Lockett is going to end up with the Raiders. That makes the most sense. But who knows? But yeah, Keenan Allen and Amari Cooper, those are the top two that are still left. And there hasn't really been any movement. I mean, Keenan Allen could still play. They both can. It's just they're not number one wide receiver material. I would like to see Keenan Allen go back to the Chargers. I've been campaigning for it. I hope that's what ends up happening. And then for Amari Cooper, I don't know. Maybe he goes back to Dallas. Because, Dallas still needs our number 2 wide receiver, outside of CeeDee Lamb. Brandon Cooks went back to New Orleans recently, so he's not an option. Now, Michael Gallup, they could reunite with him because, he retired, but now he wants to play again. So how about you bring back Michael Gallup and Amari Cooper, and you bring back Zeke, and you trade for Pollard, and you run it back with the 2021 offense, and you see what happens. Yeah, but no, Amari Cooper definitely, I would say, is an option for the Cowboys, but I don't know. It doesn't seem like they're going to do it because I feel like they would have done it already, but who knows? But let me know what you guys think, though, about Diggs signing with the Patriots. Do you like the fit? Again, I think it's beneficial for Drake May. It gives him another playmaker. It's just I have an issue with the contract. Because, again, older player coming off of a significant injury. But you know what? The Patriots had the money to spend. So, like I said, you're going to overpay. But let me know what you guys think in the comments. So when we come back from our next break, we'll talk some baseball. We will predict the American League, who's going to win each division, who's going to make the wild card. We'll get into all that when we come back from our next break. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast, and for the fourth part of the show, we are now going to get into talking about the American League and who I have winning each division, who do I have coming out of the wild card. So I took a look at the win projections for each team in the American League, and in the AL West, they have the Astros and the Rangers around 86.5. Oh, first of all, the win totals are not that high in the American League. And when we get into the National League tomorrow, you'll see why. The National League is the superior of the two. Right? When you look at the National League, there's a lot of really good teams. We've talked about this many times. When you look at the American League, it's kind of slim pickings. But we're going to start off with the AL West. So you got the Astros and the Rangers both at 86.5 wins, the Mariners at 85.5 wins, and then you got the Angels at 72.5 and the A's at 71.5. Now, the A's are no longer the Oakland A's. They are now just the A's. And they will be playing in a minor league stadium this year because, they're waiting to move into Vegas. I will tell you this right now. The A's and the Angels, you take them out. It's going to come down to these three teams. The Texas Rangers, the Seattle Mariners, and the Houston Astros. It's going to be those three teams. Now, the Mariners have very good pitching, but they can't hit. Their lineup struggles. And if they can fix this lineup, if this lineup can hit a little bit more, and you can get more out of Julio Rodriguez, because I don't think his numbers were great last year, but if this team can hit a little bit more with the pitching, this is going to be a playoff team. And they made the playoffs a couple years ago. Back in 2022. And, they had that 18-inning marathon with the Astros, and Game 1 they lost because of the walk-off by Yordan Alvarez. So, they could get back to the playoffs. But for me, and also let's get into the Astros. So the Astros lost Bregman. They traded Kyle Tucker. They traded Ryan Presley. There's no more Verlander. There's still guys coming back from injury with the pitching staff. Jose Altuve is now playing in the outfield, which I don't understand. And he's misplaced some balls out there. And he's going to misplace some in the regular season. And then for the Texas Rangers, the team that, if you remember, they won the World Series a couple years ago. Last year, they didn't make the playoffs at all. I think they went 78 and 84. I think that is the team that I'm going to pick to win the AL West. I like their lineup. They added Jake Berger and Jock Peterson as well. Some of their young guys were hurt last year. Corey Seager was also hurt last year. Jacob deGrom was hurt last year. If you can get deGrom back for a full season, and we talked about deGrom and him returning, made his return towards the end of the year, but you get DeGrom over the course of a full season, and he could pitch like he did prior to Tommy John. It's an ace-level pitcher. That's a heck of an acquisition. Now, I don't know if that's going to happen. I don't know if DeGrom's going to be able to make 20-plus starts. We'll see. I hope he does, because I really like to watch him pitch. But if the Rangers could stay healthy and you also get bounce-back years from, let's say, Adolis Garcia, he had a down year, and you got a Hall of Fame manager in Bruce Bochy. I think because of the subtractions with the Astros and my questions with Seattle's offense, I like the Rangers to win the AL West. I'm firm on that. Could be wrong, but I like the Rangers to win the division, get back to the postseason. Now we go to the AL Central. This one's tough because I've been going back and forth with this. I like the Tigers with their young players, and I like Tariq Skubal at the top of the rotation, and then bringing back Jack Flaherty, that was good. I think Gleyber Torres is going to do well with the Tigers. And you saw their young players step up, especially in that wild card series against the Astros as well. And, you had Kerry Carpenter hitting that big home run off of Emmanuel Clase in the playoffs. I think it was a grand slam, right? But, yeah, and I think the Tigers have the best manager in the division in A.J. Hinch. Now, Stephen Vogt, incredible job with the Guardians last year. It's tough. Now, I'll tell you this, the White Sox, they will not win the division. So you can throw them out. But it's going to be competitive between the Royals, the Guardians, the Tigers, and the Twins. Now, I think the Guardians got slightly worse because, they traded away Josh Naylor. Andres Gimenez is now with the Blue Jays, although he wasn't great last year. They brought back Carlos Santana, but Carlos Santana's an older player. Jose Ramirez is not happy. They're still waiting on Shane Bieber to come back. They gave Bybee an extension. They still have a good bullpen. So they're going to be up there. The Twins, they had the lead for the majority of the year, right? And then they just collapsed. And like I said, I like the Tigers. The Royals, they made the playoffs last year as well, for the first time since the World Series days. And, I like Cole Reagans at the top of their rotation. He got paid this offseason. And Bobby Witt Jr. is an MVP candidate. It's very tough. I've been going back and forth with this. I'm going to take the Guardians again. I think the Guardians are going to find a way to win the division, get back to the postseason. But it's going to be very close. We saw three AL Central teams. I think I kept saying 3 out of 4 teams. 3 out of 5 of the Central teams make the playoffs. We will not see that this year. I think you're only going to see, you could see 2. But I'm gonna take the Guardians to win the division. But I think it's going to be a very tight race throughout the season. And now we get to the AL East. Now, before the injuries, I would have told you the Yankees, definitively, I will take them to win the division. Right now, I am not so sure. Right now, they're projected at 88.5 wins. Some people are going to take the under. Some people are going to say the Yankees are not going to make the playoffs. And I was saying they could be a wild card team. I think the Red Sox have got better. The Orioles have gotten worse because they lost Corbin Burns. Now they're going to be without Gunnar Henderson to start the year, although he's not going to miss a significant amount of time. But, when I was listening to some podcasts last night, point was made that, look, you go back to the year they won 100 games, they didn't have a Corbin Burns in their rotation. You had Cano and Bautista at the back end of your bullpen, and they're getting Bautista back this year. And you still got that lineup. They did lose Santander, but they did bring in Gary Sanchez. Now, I don't know how much of a difference that's going to make, but still, you got a good young core, and, once you get Gunnar Henderson back, then you're going to be whole with your lineup. The Red Sox have gotten better. They traded for Garrett Crochet. They signed Alex Bregman. They signed Walker Buehler. The bullpen is a concern, but the Red Sox are going to be better. The Yankees, they lost Juan Soto. They did the best they could by pivoting. They got Cody Bellinger and Max Fried and Devin Williams and Paul Goldschmidt. But they're going to lose Garrett Cole for the year with Tommy John surgery. We don't know when Giancarlo Stanton's going to come back because he's dealing with the elbow injuries. Luis Gil's going to be out with the latch strain for several months. Clark Schmidt's going to miss the beginning of the season. They're dealing with a handful of injuries. And you got the Rays and the Blue Jays. I like the Santander move for the Blue Jays. That was a team that, similar to the Yankees and their problems from a few years ago, they had a ton of right-handed hitters. But now you're bringing Santander as a switch hitter, and he's got some pop. Can hit you 30-plus home runs. The rotation might not be that great. You got an older rotation. And then you bring in Max Scherzer, and, you add even more age onto that. And the Rays, you figure are going to be pesky. It's really tough. It's tough. Because right now I would say it's between the Yankees, the Orioles, and the Red Sox. I'm going to say, I don't want to be biased. I am going to pick the Baltimore Orioles to win the division. I'm going to pick the Orioles to win the division. They got a good lineup. The bullpen is going to be whole now, bringing back Bautista. The pitching is a concern. The starting pitching is a huge concern. But this is a very good young team, and they have a good manager in Hyde. I just feel like the injuries for the Yankees, it's really going to hurt them in this race. Now, that's not to say the Yankees can't win it, but I think the Orioles... I'm going to take the Orioles. And I was leaning towards the Red Sox, but you know what? I'm going to say the Orioles win the division. Now, when it comes to the playoffs, or the wild card teams, Yankees are a wild card. Red Sox will be a wild card. So you'll have two AL East rivals making the playoffs as wild card teams. Now, who is that third wild card team going to be? There's several teams you could pick. You could pick one of the Central teams. You could pick the Astros. And you got to remember, the Astros got off to a really bad start last year, but they were able to right the ship and make it. And who's to say, a third or a fourth AL East team makes it? The Rays or the Blue Jays? I don't think that's going to happen. I'm going to give the Astros the respect they deserve and say that they make it. So the wild card teams are the Yankees, the Red Sox, and the Astros. You got the Rangers winning the West, the Guardians winning the Central, and then the Orioles I have winning the East. So, yeah. I know some people watching this were probably thinking, you're going to take the Yankees. I can't do it. I said I think they're going to be a wild card team. I was tempted to say they're still going to find a way to win the East, but I just think that it's going to get worse before it gets better. I do think there's going to be more injuries that happen down the line, and I think it's going to be too much to overcome. And heck, that might lead to them just flat out missing the playoffs. The Yankees have Carlos Carrasco and Will Warren now in their rotation, and Marcus Stroman after they were trying to trade him. So there's going to be a lot of bumps in the road for that team, but I do think they'll be good enough where they can make the postseason. But they need a lot of guys to step up. And they're going to have a very good bullpen themselves, with Devin Williams and Luke Weaver at the back end of their bullpen there. But we'll see how it goes. It all starts tomorrow. But let me know what you guys think. Who do you have winning each division? Who do you have coming out of the wild cards? So to run through it again, I got the Orioles winning the American League East, Guardians winning the Central, Texas Rangers winning the West, and then I have the Yankees, the Red Sox, and the Astros. How about those three wild card teams if that ends up happening? But yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments. So we are going to take our final break of the show now, and then when we come back, we will do a season overview on the Pittsburgh Steelers. We will talk about how their season went, what they've done in the offseason so far and what they could potentially do with their first selection in the NFL draft. So, for one final time today, make sure to stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast. All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast, and for the final part of the show, we are now going to talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers and their 2024 season, and it was an eventful one. How it went, what they've done in the offseason so far, where they're going to be picking, what they could potentially do with their first-round selection. So, the Steelers. In the previous offseason, they completely changed their quarterback room. They had Kenny Pickett, Mason Rudolph, and Mitchell Trubisky. All three of those guys no longer with the team. Well, one of them is now back with the team. But last offseason, they all left or were traded. Kenny Pickett got traded to the Eagles, and Mason Rudolph signed with the Titans. And Trubisky once again became the backup to Josh Allen. So what the Steelers did is they traded for Justin Fields, and they also signed Russell Wilson to the veterans minimum. Now, Russell Wilson ended up not starting the year. Well, we talked about all this before because Russell Wilson signed with the Giants. Dealt with a calf injury. So he missed, the first part of the season, first 6 games, and Justin Fields started. And the Steelers ended up going 4-2 with Justin Fields. They started off 3-0. And, I thought at that point, I was saying, look, if Russ is healthy and the Steelers are still winning games, I think you keep going with Fields until he starts to not play well. But that ended up not happening. So, Fields, they started off 3-0. They beat the Falcons. Kirk Cousins' debut did not go very well. Steelers won on defense and 6 Boswell field goals. And that's not the only time that Boswell was their only source of offense, because that happened again later in the year. But then they beat the Broncos. Bo Nix, his second career start, they won that game 13-6. They beat the Chargers 20-10 at home. They did lose to the Colts, however, 27-24. Fields did have over 300 yards passing. George Pickens had a big day, but Fields fumbled the ball. Pickens fumbled it. Those turnovers were costly. Fields did have 2 rushing touchdowns. But yeah, so they ended up losing that game. Actually, Joe Flacco played the majority of that game because Anthony Richardson got hurt. And then they ended up losing to the Cowboys the following week as well. Fields didn't put up big numbers in that game. Only had 131 yards passing and 27 yards rushing. Their leading receiver was Najee Harris. He had 2 receptions for 35 yards. Cowboys won at the very end. Still don't know how they won that, but they did. And that game got pushed back because of bad weather. So that game was over at midnight. Well, after midnight. But then they beat up on the Raiders. Their running game really worked in that contest. They had almost 200 yards rushing and 3 rushing touchdowns. So, yeah, 4-2. But then Fields goes to the bench, and they put in Russell Wilson against the Jets. And, Russ was efficient. 264 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, no picks. Steelers ran the ball for 149 yards. Pickens had 111 yards receiving and a touchdown. The Steelers almost had a pick 6 in that game. They picked off Aaron Rodgers twice. But yeah, they went 37-15. It was 15-6, and then they proceeded to score 31 unanswered points. Then they win a close game against the Giants on Monday night. They get an interception of Daniel Jones at the end to cement the win. Tyrone Tracy had a big day, though. They had a problem stopping him. He had over 140 yards rushing. But Russ, 278 yards passing and a touchdown. Najee Harris had a good game. Then they went into the bye, and they came out of the bye. And this is when we got to the very tough part of their schedule. So they were going up against the Commanders. Commanders at that point were 7-2. Steelers were 6-2. And they acquired Mike Williams at the trade deadline. He ended up scoring the game-winning touchdown. And the Steelers won by a point, 28-27. And then you start to say, all right, are the Steelers legit? And we said that even more because they won a very close game with the Ravens. And once again, Chris Boswell came up clutch and kicked 6 field goals, and the Steelers won 18-16. Now, the Ravens hurt themselves. Derrick Henry fumbled very early on in the game, and that proved costly. Isaiah Likely also had a fumble in the game as well. But at that point, the Steelers were 8-2, and you're thinking, wow, they could win the AFC North. But then they lose in that snow game against the Browns, and that proved to be a big difference. A big difference. The Browns, 2 of their 3 victories, we talked about this week, came against division rivals, the Steelers and the Ravens. But the Steelers had an opportunity to win that game. We had a lot of points being scored in the fourth quarter. Game was going back and forth. And, the Steelers lost. And, sorry, had to hold back the sneeze. I try the best I can, but it's just, I can't do it. Can't do it. But yeah, so they ended up losing 24-19. But then they bounced back. They put up 44 points against the Bengals. Russell Wilson had over 400 yards passing, 3 touchdowns. He did have an interception in the game. But the Steelers got back on track. They improved to 9-3, and then they got their revenge on the Browns a week later, and they won 27-14. They did not have George Pickens in that game, but they were still able to come away with the win. Jameis Winston threw a couple of picks. So, yeah, Steelers were not at 10-3 at that point, and you thought, wow, they're in the driver's seat to win this division. It's theirs to lose. And then they proceeded to lose 5 straight games, including the playoffs. They lost 27-13 against the Eagles. Now, there was a momentum shift in that game. Najee Harris fumbled in the game, and that kind of changed the momentum of it. Was it Najee Harris? Well, Russ fumbled in the game. Oh, wait, actually, no. I think that was the Najee Harris fumble, because there was miscommunication on the pitch, and that led to a momentum shift there. But, they ended up losing that game 27-13. Ravens beat up on them 34-17. Derrick Henry ran all over them. He ran the ball for 162 yards. The Ravens ran the ball for 220 yards in total. Lamar Jackson had 3 touchdown passes. So, yeah, both teams were 10-5 at that point. Then they played on Christmas against the Chiefs, and the Chiefs dominated. Mahomes had 300 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, no picks. And the offense just couldn't do anything that day. Russ threw a pick. And then they played against the Bengals, and they lose a close game there, 19-17. And, Steelers ended up being a wild card team, and they lost 28-14. And, they showed some life in the second half, but, yeah, they got shut out 21-0 in the first half, and maybe if they would have played a little bit better, who knows. But Derrick Henry, once again, almost 200 yards rushing in the game. The Ravens as a team ran the ball for 299 yards. And they got knocked out. One and done once again. And now we'll see what happens. They bring in Mason Rudolph. They're in on Aaron Rodgers, and Aaron Rodgers, if he's still going to play, is probably going to be the quarterback next year, the way it's set up. But it was a disappointing finish to their year. And looking at the stats for the Steelers, individual players, you look at the regular season. So Russ finished with 16 touchdown passes to 5 picks. We talked about that. Fields had 5 touchdowns to 1 pick, had 1,100 yards passing. Najee Harris over 1,000 yards and 6 touchdowns. He's not going to be back. They brought in Kenneth Gainwell. Jalen Warren, 511 yards rushing and a touchdown. Fields had 5 rushing touchdowns. They did kind of sprinkle him in at times. I felt like in the playoff game they should have went back to Fields, to see if he could provide a spark, but that never happened. And George Pickens did miss some time in 2024. He was their leading receiver, 900 yards, receiving and 3 touchdowns. And then Pat Freiermuth, he led the team in touchdown receptions. He had 7. He had 653 yards. Calvin Austin, I like what I saw from him last year. I've voiced that a lot on the show. He had 548 receiving yards and 4 touchdowns. Mike Williams, though, other than that one play against the Commanders, really was a non-factor. I mean, he had 9 receptions for 132 yards and a touchdown. That's basically something he would do with the Chargers when he was with Justin Herbert. And then for the defense, Patrick Queen on the season, he led the team in tackles, 65 total tackles. He had 1 sack, 2 forced fumbles. Minkah Fitzpatrick on the year, he had 1 interception on the year. Dante Jackson, who is no longer with the team, he had 5 interceptions. He led the team. T.J. Watt, 11.5 sacks. That led the team. Alex Highsmith had 6. Nick Herbig, he had 5.5. 4 forced fumbles. T.J. Watt had 6 forced fumbles. Defense is getting older. Oh, he also had Cam Hayward, who had 8 sacks as well. Can't forget about him. But yeah, Steelers defense is still pretty good. Looking at Boswell's stats, though, I mean, he was money. 41 of 44 for field goals, that's 93%. 35 of 35 on extra points. So he was 9 of 9 on 20 to 29 yarders. 12 of 12 for 30 on 30 to 39 yard field goals. 7 of 8 on 40 to 49 yards. I think the one miss was the game against the Browns in the snow. So actually, I might be wrong, though, on that. And then he was 13 of 15 for 50-plus yard field goals. But, yeah, he was unbelievable this year. He was, one of their MVPs, honestly. And then looking at the exact stats for both their offense and their defense. So, offensively, yeah, they were in the 20s. Total yards per game, they were 23rd. Points per game, they were 20th. Rushing yards, they were 11th. Passing yards, they were 27th. So, yeah, the offense, was average. And then defensively, total yards allowed per game, they were 12th. Although the Ravens, really brought it to them in the 2 games of Baltimore. Points allowed per game, they were 8th. Rushing yards allowed per game, they were 6th. Passing yards allowed per game, they were 25th. So the Steelers, that's an area they could address maybe as the secondary. And in the offseason, they traded for DK Metcalf, which I like that move. They needed another big-name receiver, and they got it. So we'll see how that combination works with him and George Pickens. We could see George Pickens traded. Who knows? They also signed a couple of guys in the secondary. They signed Brandon Echols. They signed Juan Thornhill. They brought back Mason Rudolph. Oh, yeah, they also signed Darius Slay as well. So they have addressed the secondary. Malik Harrison they brought in as well, another former Raven. So that's what they've done in the offseason. The major move was obviously the trade with DK. And then they will be picking 21st. So they could take a Jackson Dart. That's something that could happen. If not, they take a quarterback later in the draft possibly. But I think at some point you will see the Steelers take a quarterback. Second round, they ended up trading for DK Metcalf. They got a 6th round in return. So they have a 3rd round pick. That's ninth pick in the round, 83rd overall. Then they have the 21st pick in the 4th round, which is 123rd. 5th round, they have the 20th pick, which is 156th. Now they have a 6th round pick. 9th pick in the round, that's the 185th pick. And then they have a 7th rounder which is the 13th pick in the round, which is 229th overall, which was from Atlanta through the Eagles. So that's a little complicated there, but that's where they're going to be picking. You can definitely see them adding another playmaker to the offense at some point in the draft, but I think we will see them take a quarterback at some point. So we will see what happens. And my friend was just saying something about Mookie Betts, so I want to see if we can, because I know we talked about him a little bit yesterday. So I don't see anything right now. I'm looking on Twitter right now. I don't see anything. But hopefully, well, I'm trying to see if I can pull it up. But I'm not seeing anything. Yeah, I don't see anything right now. I'm seeing him talking about the medicine work that he's taking for the illness that he's dealing with. So I don't know. But we'll talk about it tomorrow. If we have an update on that. Again, I was checking social media, couldn't find anything. But hopefully everything's okay though. But that is pretty much it for the show for today. Thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure to check out all the other shows as well on the network. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to our YouTube channels, and make sure to listen to us wherever you get your podcasts as well. And until next time, I'm Kenneth Grunfelder signing off from the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Have a good day, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great. I don't wanna